Hello there everyone, Mr. E here today to talk about Ogryn. I know that the discussion about Ogryn has already been had. I am part of that discussion, right? I've made videos about him and his talents for a while now, and I have seen videos from all the other content creators. I've seen the ones from JTC Live, I've seen Reginald's video about Ogryn, so I don't think I need to beat this dead horse anymore. I think the information, I think the general unrest of the community about how poorly this class is working currently is out there, so it's all up to Fat Shark as to whether or not they are going to do anything about it. And I just can't care any more than that, right? Because if I get really invested in it and be like, oh my god, if they don't fix Ogryn in the first 3 months of this year, I'm gonna be heartbroken, there's a good chance that that's not happening, right? I'm holding out some hope, but not a whole lot, because I've been in this situation before with this game and other games. So I wanted to instead focus on something that the Ogryn has that's actually good, a silver lining to playing Ogryn. Because as I see it, the Ogryn is like an abused child who just has he's not ever given any new toys or really anything fun to do. He's locked in his shitty room all day, but he has like a couple of toys that are just his mainstays. Sure, he's had them since he was like a 5-year-old, and he's now 15 and is like, you know, desperately understimulated by the amount of different things he can do with them, but they're still good toys. And the toys that I'm talking about are, you know, his weapons, obviously, but today I want to talk about specifically the Kickback. And the Kickback is such a good weapon. It is pretty much an auto-include on every Ogryn build. It works on both a melee Ogryn, like a charge Ogryn, a taunt Ogryn, and it works very well as a point-blank barrage Ogryn. This is a point-blank barrage build for the Kickback. If you have not seen my video on it, I highly recommend this build. It's super fun. You'll top the damage charts. But why is it so good? And, you know, why is it such an auto-include for everything? Well, firstly, it's just a really dumb weapon. And by that I mean it requires almost no skill to use in the maximal effective way at all. You just simply point it in the direction of wherever the most enemies are that you want to be dead, and you pull the trigger, and then most of those enemies are dead. So you see how there's a sniper and a trapper all the way over there? I can shoot them from this range and I can kill them. Now, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Those enemies are forever away from me, and this is a shotgun. If I aim at this pillar here, you can see the spread is crazy. Like, there's a good chance that only 1 or 2 of those pellets is hitting a single target that's over in that group. But why is it killing all of them in one hit? Well, the secret comes down to the way that this gun's damage is calculated, or shotguns in general are calculated in this game. There is a minimum pellet count, meaning if I graze this sniper with even a single pellet, well, that would be on his head, but if I graze him with even a single pellet, it calculates the damage as if I hit him with, I think the number is like 3 pellets. It used to be a lot higher, actually. It used to be like 5, but there's actually a lot of pellets in this gun, and yeah, so if you just graze a single enemy with a pellet, they are counted as being hit multiple times by it, so they get a very, very sizable chunk of damage. And this is what makes this thing do such good, solid damage to unarmored targets at medium to long range. And at close ranges, if you can land every pellet on targets, you end up with some pretty absurd damage that just instantly annihilates those targets. It's also an excellent weapon at cleaving for hordes, especially thanks to, again, the minimum pellet count, but also due to that widespread and a few talents we have to talk about in the tree. So this is an all-rounder weapon. The only thing it doesn't do very well is dealing with armored targets. So in a target like this, I'll just dink off of it. Yeah, he has full, like almost no health, but you can see there it does almost nothing to him. So we'll need some rending for a target like this, or you can get a crit. A crit has due to the way that crits are calculated in this game, they do ignore a little bit of armor. So we could use that to kill an enemy like that instead. So what perks and blessings are good on the Kickback here? Well, the Kickback is blessed for having such absurd damage that he really doesn't need a whole lot in order to hit certain breakpoints. I spec into Maniac and Flax because Flak allows you to pick targets like these gunners, at a little bit longer range, depending on how many pellets you hit them with. It also happens to apply to lots of shooters, like these guys are flak armored, and so therefore if you hit them with even a single pellet, it'll take lots of damage. These guys are also flak armored if you hit them in the head, but be careful because they have a chest plate now that's carapace and can deflect damage. Yeah, flak is just super good. Maniacs applies to not only these guys, but to chargers. And one thing I really love about this weapon is that it's pretty easy to one-shot charges with it. If you don't take that 25% damage, you do have to get a much more solid every pellet connection. With the 25% damage, you can, from like a little bit closer than this, you can one-shot them without much aiming required at all. But the other thing you could probably swap in here for perks is unarmored, because there's a lot of unarmored enemies to go around, like all of these fellows here, well, a couple of them anyway, and then like naked ragers, all that stuff is counted as unarmored. These yellow gunners back here are unarmored. Well, some of them anyway. So flak armored is by far the best, as you probably just saw looking around. There's tons of enemies that are getting hit and registering as flak armor. So we need to talk about the blessings here. Unfortunately, this weapon isn't blessed with a whole lot of very good blessings. Let me just show you the ones that I think are valid at all, so you understand what to build for. First off, this whole top row is worthless. The whole top row, unfortunately, when they added, tried to make all the weapons in the game have 9 blessings at least, they added these in, and they're all garbage because they all rely on you using a special attack, aka swinging the gun around. No one is doing that. You should not be doing that with this gun. You should be shooting the gun. So we don't care if the weapon melee penetrates, armor and does more stagger. We don't care that our melee damage is going up for 3 whole seconds when we hit 3+ enemies with a range attack. That's going to be useless for us. We don't care about, we don't care about punishing fire. This is like 15% strength for 1 shot when we hit multiple enemies with our weapon melee. So none of these are any good at all. Then running gun. This is one that might tempt you to think that it is good, because what it does is it reduces your weapon spread by 30%, makes your aim tighter, and you can hit fire while you're sprinting. So instead of doing this, which is pretty much, not hard to do at all, but sure, you could shoot while you're doing this and not have to do that slight pause there, but you would also get 15% extra damage to enemies that are close while you do that. I don't find that very useful. And also, the reduce in spread is a negative for this weapon, because remember, like I said before, the minimum pellet count allows us to just barely nick enemies on both sides of a reticle and deal full damage to them, or almost full damage to them. So in this situation, if I had the reduced spread, it would be looking like this instead, but instead I can shoot that wide cone and hit and nearly kill everybody in there, thanks to having a wider cone. So on this weapon, generally, the wider the cone, the better, sort of counterintuitively there. We also have a couple of perks on here that are going to give us damage, and that's really where we want to live with this weapon, is speccing into full damage. We've got Full Bore and Blaze Away, which I think are probably Full Bore, Blaze Away, and Surgical are your best bets. Surgical is very nice because it allows you to set up for like charging mutants, and maybe there's a crusher or something that you need to actually penetrate the armor on, and you don't have your point blank barrage ready. This will allow you to penetrate armor on harder targets and do a little bit more damage to enemies that you can set up for just a second or two to get ready for. Full Bore is probably the must-have on this weapon. It's pretty easy to hit every pellet on a single enemy, and it gives you 30% whole strength for 5 whole seconds, which is very nice. That's like 3 reloads. You just have to hit the same enemy, which is fairly easy to do on larger targets, and when they're very close, obviously. And then Blaze Away is an interesting sort of middle case. Yes, it can give you 40% power. However, it consumes a lot of ammo through this because there is no pausing allowed. You have to be pretty much firing as soon as you get the next shell in there. So if you're not already lined up on your next target and ready to pull the trigger as soon as that reload's done, you're losing the buff. I wish it was a little bit more forgiving, like an extra second or so to choose a new target and aim after reloading, because right now it's so tight that the fun thing about this is, well, it would be that you can actually use the melee on this weapon to stack Blaze Away and then try and shoot afterwards, but it falls off before you get the chance to shoot. So it would be nice to see this one extended a little bit for the weapon. The other 2 blessings we have to look at are Terrifying Barrage and Inspiring Barrage. Inspiring Barrage is just too little toughness for it to matter. Remember, we're also regenerating some toughness from just bracing this weapon thanks to an ogryn talent. And yeah, it's just generally not anything to write home about. If this weapon had Glory Hunter, which gives you like, 36% toughness on range weapon kill or elite kill, we would take that, but we don't have that option. This is way worse than that. And then Terrifying Barrage, it just has too many qualifiers. We have to be close to these enemies, first of all, and then we get an 8-meter radius around us in which enemies are suppressed. And remember, only ranged enemies can be suppressed. So melee enemies are still running up and attacking you. It's the like small gunners and stuff like that are going to be cowering. But if you're that close to them already, I think you've been using the kickback wrong, because we should have shot them well before we were within 8 meters of them. We should have been shooting them from across the room and killing them. So that's how I feel about the blessings. It's pretty much one of these, 2 of these 3 in these bottom corner here. Okay, let us go on to looking at some builds that you can use with the kickback. Well, first of all, there's only 3 builds for ogryn, right? There's this one, there's this one, the range build, and there's this one. So those are your 3 options, and all 3 of them use the kickback, as you can see here. The kickback is an awesome weapon. It's an all-rounder. It happens to actually have more synergy with things in the tree than almost any other ogryn weapon does, because of its, the faster reloading playstyle and just generally the perks that it gets in the tree. So the first perks that affect it is heavyweight. Duh. This affects everything in ogryn. 30% damage against bulwarks, crushers, plague ogrins, and reapers. Everyone's taking this. So yeah, let's move on. Steady grip. Steady grip is interesting for this weapon because, yes, you can brace this weapon and get 5% per second, which is honestly pretty nice, especially when you're charging surgical. However, you don't continue to have that blessing while you are reloading. So if you have to do the reload animation, you will automatically go into doing that. And the problem with this weapon is that you can't continue to brace it after you shoot. The game will auto reload for you, which is kind of annoying. It'd be nice if you could just hold it and continue charging, because sometimes you shoot and you're getting shot and you're like, okay, I'm just gonna get out of here while I'm reloading, but you've already shot the shot, so you've lost the blessing until you reload again. So yeah, this one is like kind of useful. I'd rather have it than not have it, right? Then we come down here, we got to talk about Point Blank Barrage. Point Blank Barrage is made for only 2 weapons. It's made for the fire spreading twin stubber, the Atlas Twin Lake stubber. That's when you go this route here, and it's also made for the kickback. The kickback rules with this thing. You will do so much damage if you use this Point Blank Barrage build with it. What it does is it gives you an instant reload, which is nice because it's hard to reload this thing, and it gives you 70% reload speed for the next 10 whole seconds, which means you can get off a crazy amount of shots in that time. It gives you less brace movement speed penalties, so you're actually moving around at a good clip. You're like strafing these enemies, and 15% close range damage, which is great for us because we're usually kind of like getting close to shooting things at close range, and it allows us to clap crushers and stuff like that in no time. Then we've got Bullet Bravado. Again, this is a weapon that benefits a lot from this. Some weapons find themselves in that terrible spot in the middle where they don't reload quite fast enough, or they don't shoot quite fast enough to get the benefit. This weapon reloads in every shot. So every shot you fire, which is a lot with the 70% reload speed, you get 10% toughness back. And that's the main way we're regenerating 5% per second while we're bracing, and then we shoot the shot and we regenerate 10% by doing the reload. So this is how we keep our toughness up. And then Hail of Fire is absolutely mandatory because this weapon has terrible rending, or terrible armor penetration. You can see here, well, I actually crit him there, but yeah, you can see there, like when I shoot this enemy and I don't crit him, it just completely dinks off of him. You have to either get a crit to penetrate armor on crushers, or you can draw down into this mode and you'll have that 30% rending, which can pop them immediately. Very, very nice for dealing with crushers. Ammo stash, duh, 25% ammo is awesome with the kickback. The kickback is super, super ammo efficient. If you like running with the kickback and you have friends, I mean, it's a steep proposition for a lot of people, but if you happen to have friends, try to get them to play a veteran and run Survivalist Aura. They should be doing that anyway if they're playing veteran, but Survivalist Aura will pretty much solve your ammo economy entirely. It's really, really great for the kickback. Coward Culling, you are suppressing the hell out of enemies with this thing. It's such a big boom. You'll see that just firing anywhere near enemies like this suppresses them for quite a while, so that enemy is taking 20% extra damage, and yeah, like it's a very good weapon at suppressing enemies. So yeah, we get a lot of benefit out of it for that, and activating this does also suppress enemies too, in some way. I forget how that works. Anyway, we've got a couple of pickups down here that keep us much more mobile while we're using it. Get Stuck In and Unstoppable Momentum. You'll be using Get Stuck In with the melee versions, as you can see here. Get Stuck In is awesome. You know, obviously you'll be meleeing on these builds, but on a range build with this weapon, Get Stuck In allows us to continue moving and strafing while our point blank barrage is going on for a little bit there. And then Unstoppable Momentum is very, very nice for this gun because we can secure kills pretty much guaranteed, and it gives us 20% movement speed. Normally when you shoot with this weapon and reload, you can see in the top right corner there, look at my movement speed, it's 4, and when I shoot and reload, it drops to like 3.5-ish. But if you kill an enemy with it, you stay at 4 or above. So it removes the movement speed penalty more or less if you do get a kill when you shoot, which is pretty easy. Then we've got the 2 nodes that saw a lot of people being pretty upset about the changes made to Ogryn recently, myself included. This is the only gun that actually kind of likes these 2 nodes at the same time. It's one of the only guns in the game that can routinely benefit from Pacemaker, and it already loved Reloaded and Ready. So before, you might not have picked up Pacemaker because it was here and you would have taken Ammo Stash. Now you have to take it to get down here anyway, and it's actually pretty damn good on this gun. So all it requires you to do is get 5 hits with a single attack, which for the Kickback here is as easy as doing this. You can see there I hit 5, you can see the little buff below my hexagon. That was hitting 5 enemies, and it's that easy. You can do it into a horde. You can do it across the map at enemies like this. Oh, well, not quite. You know, we'll get a line up here eventually. There we go. That's hitting 5 enemies right there because this thing has absurd range. And I always read this thing wrong. I read it like it said that you get a free or a 25% faster reload within the next 5 seconds. No, actually it just gives you 5 seconds of faster reloads. So you can actually pump out 3 reloads in this time, as you can see here, without even shooting any extra enemies. I can shoot 4 more shots in the time that reload buff is going on, and it's very nice. It allows you to spec into stuff that's not reload speed. So yeah, I don't hate on this talent, except for, you know, on most other weapons. Then we've got Reload and Ready. No duh, this is going to be amazing in the Kickback. Every time you're shooting it, you have just reloaded it, so this is always active, and as if this thing needed any more damage, it's pretty nuts. And then we got to talk about Burst Limber Override and how pretty much useless it is for the weapon. If you're going for the range build, I mean, yeah, you'll take it because it's free damage, and sometimes it does actually do some good stuff, but both maximum firepower and good shooting are pretty much useless. Good shooting gives you a guaranteed critical if the shot is lucky, that 12% chance of being lucky, but crits on this weapon pretty much don't matter. Let me show you what I mean. If you inspect this weapon and go to the attack breakdowns, you can see that if I hit a flak armored enemy, which is most of my enemies, and get a critical, I'm only doing about 20% more damage. That is a pathetic critical rate. If this was like any other weapon, it would be at least 2 times, so that would say 3,000, or, you know, some of the best critical weapons, they have like 3 or 3.5 times multipliers. Can you even imagine if this said 5,000 damage when you got a critical? I mean, that would be insane. So obviously it wouldn't be probably balanced, but this weapon doesn't love getting criticals all that much, so getting a 12% chance to get a critical is equivalent to like 1% damage, no joke. So not exactly anything to write home about. Maximum firepower is probably the more useful one, just barely out of the 2, because it can give us a little bit of ability cooldown reduction. But remember, we have a 12% chance to trigger this, which is roughly 1 in 8.5 shots. So, and we only get what, plus 200% for 2 seconds, so we would get 4 seconds of cooldown extra. I mean, it's something. It's not much of something, and this is let's see how long it takes us to get that 4 seconds of cooldown here. Well, we can use our ultimate. This will give us a faster chance of getting it. There it was. Okay, so there you go. I got a little bit extra cooldown out of it there. You know, it did take about 7 shots to get, but that's on average what you can expect to shoot before you see that cooldown reduction happening. Unfortunately, we have to take one of these in order to get to that 12% instead of 8%, if you wanted to go for the range build at all. Generally, this weapon really does kick ass with the point blank barrage. It uses it very, very well. You will do probably the most damage in the team, but you know, it's also a mainstay on these melee builds, because these melee builds, they don't really need the range weapon, excepting when there are targets that are high value that the ogryn just has a hard time dealing with. So pretty much all specials, right? The ogryn has no problem with any melee enemies in the game. He can knock them all down, he can shove them all around, but when you see a special or a gunner at a medium to long range, you just want to pull out a weapon and just deal with them instantly. And so not having to worry about doing something like, God, everyone was saying like, oh, this is so good for you know, melee ogryn. If I wanted to kill that trapper there, I would be like, got him, right? If I wanted to, you know, sniper, I could get him like that. But I'm been meleeing and I gotta pull this thing out, and then I gotta brace. I mean, you gotta do a lot of steps in order to hit. That's how fast you can do that. Otherwise, you're going to pull it out and you might miss the attack because this thing doesn't hit fire very well, as you can see there. With the kickback, it's as easy as I'm meleeing over here, I swap over here, I go like that, I swap back. Like that's how the kickback is useful to everybody else. So I think that's everything about the kickback. It is just a super solid weapon. I was a kickback non-believer for a while. I thought it'd be annoying to have a single shot and then have to reload, but that single shot is just so good. And hopefully I've shown you that there is still a light at the end of the tunnel. There's something that you can hold near and dear to your heart and say that, you know what, Fat Shark, you can never take this away from ogryns. We still have the kickback at the end of the day, you know? But I just got like a wicked, like an evil smile. Mr. Evil just came into the in the room here. What if Fat Shark nerfed the kickback? That would just be chef's kiss. If they said, you know what, we've been looking at ogryn, and he's just fine, but he does have one weapon that's overperforming, and that's the kickback. And they just nerfed it. They cut the damage by like a third. God, that would be so good. Anyway, now that I put that terrible fucking idea out into the world, that'll be it for me today. I hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you soon. Mr. E out.